One tweet, 17 words. The entire special relationship shattered in 43 seconds. I watched it happen in real time. On a grey Thursday afternoon, the White House didn't just criticize Britain, they demolished us. What Sarah Rogers revealed about Keir Starmer's refusal to ban cousin marriage made America question everything they thought they knew about their closest ally. The Rayburn Room in the West Wing was packed with reporters when Rogers, Trump's senior communications director, stepped to the podium. No prepared statement, just her phone in one hand and a folder marked UK intelligence briefing in the other. The room went silent. Everyone sensed something major was about to break. "I'm going to read something to you," Rogers began, her voice carrying that distinctive East Coast sharpness that cuts through political spin like a scalpel through flesh. "And then I'm going to tell you why the president is deeply concerned about what's happening in the United Kingdom." She held up her phone so the cameras could capture the screen. The tweet was from the UK Parliament's official legislative tracker. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has blocked Parliamentary Bill HC 2847, which would have banned first-cousin marriages in England and Wales. The bill, supported by cross-party MPs citing serious genetic health risks, will not proceed to second reading. Rogers let that sink in for exactly 3 seconds. Then she looked directly into the CNN camera. "Let me be very clear about what this means. The leader of what we consider our closest ally just refused to protect children from a practice that doubles their risk of serious genetic disorders. Not slightly increases, doubles." The NBC correspondent raised his hand, but Rogers wasn't finished. "The United States banned cousin marriage in most states over a century ago. We did it because the science was clear. We did it because protecting children mattered more than political calculation. Today, Keir Starmer decided that political convenience was more important than British children's health." She opened the folder and I could see from the live feed that her hands were shaking slightly. Not from nervousness, from controlled anger. According to NHS data provided to us through intelligence sharing agreements, approximately 6% of children born from first-cousin marriages develop serious genetic conditions. That's compared to 3% in the general population. For context, that means thousands of British children are born every year with preventable disabilities because their government refuses to act. Rogers pulled out a document bearing the NHS logo, classified stamps clearly visible along the margins. The annual cost to the British healthcare system from these preventable conditions exceeds £830 million. That's over $1 billion spent every year treating children who didn't have to suffer. Children whose genetic disorders could have been prevented if their Prime Minister had the courage to do what's right instead of what's politically convenient. The Associated Press reporter shouted a question. "Miss Rogers, isn't this internal British policy? Why is the White House commenting on domestic UK legislation?" Rogers smiled, but there was no warmth in it. When your closest ally starts making decisions that violate basic human rights and child welfare, it stops being an internal matter. When a Western democracy chooses cultural sensitivity over children's lives, the entire free world has a responsibility to speak up. She leaned forward, both hands on the podium. "Let me tell you what really happened here." Keir Starmer looked at the evidence. He saw that cousin marriage is concentrated in specific communities. He saw that raising this issue might cost him votes in those communities. And he decided that his political survival mattered more than children being born with heart defects, neurological disorders, and shortened life expectancies. The room erupted. Reporters shouted over each other. But Rogers' next words cut through the chaos like thunder. "The president has instructed the State Department to reassess certain aspects of our special relationship with the United Kingdom. When a nation's leader won't protect its most vulnerable citizens from preventable harm, we have to question what other values we thought we shared." Minutes after Rogers finished speaking, the story exploded across British media. Sky News interrupted regular programming. The BBC sent breaking news alerts to millions of phones. The Guardian's headline was almost identical to the Telegraph's, a rare moment of cross-political unity. White House condemns Starmer over cousin marriage ban refusal. But the real devastation was happening on social media. Rogers' statement had been clipped into dozens of short videos, each one more damaging than the last. Within 30 minutes, Starmer was trending #1 in the UK, US, and 17 other countries. The tweets were brutal. America just called out Britain for practicing medieval customs. Let that sink in. The special relationship is over. Starmer killed it to protect a voting bloc. When Trump's team is making more sense than Labour on child welfare, you know something's gone catastrophically wrong. Conservative MP Richard Holden tweeted shortly after, "Sarah Rogers is absolutely right. I voted for Bill HC 2847. Starmer whipped Labour MPs to abstain. He chose politics over children. Shameful." Even more damaging was the response from Dr. Sarah Chen, a geneticist at Imperial College London, who had testified before Parliament about the health risks. "I provided MPs with peer-reviewed evidence showing that first-cousin marriage increases the risk of recessive genetic disorders by 100 to 300%. Starmer's office told me this was culturally sensitive and wouldn't be pursued." Today, America said what British politicians won't. Protecting children matters more than votes. Soon after, Downing Street issued a response. It was 2 sentences long and catastrophically weak. The Prime Minister respects diverse cultural practices within the bounds of British law. The government remains committed to protecting all children's welfare through existing health and social services. Political analysts immediately recognized it as a non-answer that confirmed everything Rogers had accused Starmer of doing. Piers Morgan's tweet captured the national mood. Downing Street just confirmed they're choosing cultural sensitivity over children's health. Sarah Rogers destroyed Starmer in 43 seconds, and his response proves she was right. But Rogers wasn't done. Later that afternoon, she appeared on Fox News via satellite from the White House. The interview would become the most watched political segment of the year. Sarah, the host, began, "Some people are saying the White House is interfering in British domestic policy. What do you say to that?" Rogers didn't hesitate. "I say those people are missing the point. This isn't about interfering. It's about holding a mirror up to a supposed ally and asking, when did you stop caring about children?" She leaned into the camera. "Look, we've watched what's been happening in the UK. We've seen police arresting people for social media posts while ignoring grooming gangs. We've seen universities become radicalization hotbeds. We've seen the UAE stop sending students to British universities because they're concerned about extremism. And now we see the Prime Minister refuse to ban a practice that every developed nation recognizes as harmful to children." The host interrupted. "The UAE stopping student exchanges, that's been confirmed?" "Absolutely. The United Arab Emirates announced last month they're redirecting students away from UK universities, citing concerns about radicalization and hostile cultural environments. When Middle Eastern nations think your universities are too extreme, you have a serious problem." Rogers pulled out another document. And it's not just education. We're seeing British police forces investigate social media posts with more urgency than they investigate grooming gangs. We're seeing politicians propose banning X, formerly Twitter, because they don't like criticism. And now we see Starmer refuse to protect children from genetic disorders because he's afraid of losing votes. She set the document down with deliberate force. At what point does Britain stop being a reliable ally? At what point do we say, you've abandoned the values that made the special relationship special? The segment went viral within minutes. Within an hour, it had been viewed over 12 million times across platforms. Labour MPs were in full panic mode. Group WhatsApp chats obtained by The Times showed the chaos. "We need to get ahead of this. Sarah Rogers is destroying us. How do we respond when she's right? We did block the bill for political reasons. Starmer needs to reverse course immediately, or we're going to lose the next election over this." That evening, Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch held an impromptu press conference outside Parliament. Her statement was surgical. Today, the White House said what many of us have been trying to say for months. Keir Starmer puts political calculation ahead of children's welfare. He blocked a bill that would have prevented thousands of children from being born with serious genetic conditions. Why? Because he was afraid of losing votes in certain communities. She paused, letting cameras capture her expression. "When America has to remind Britain about protecting children, we've lost our way. When our closest ally questions our commitment to basic human rights, we have a leadership crisis. Keir Starmer's decision on cousin marriage isn't just bad policy. It's a moral failure that's damaged Britain's reputation around the world. The press conference was brutal in its precision. Badenoch had taken Rodgers's attack and weaponized it into a domestic political crisis for Labour. Soon after, polling data started emerging. YouGov released an emergency poll showing that 68% of Britons supported banning first cousin marriages, including 61% of Labour voters. More devastatingly, 52% agreed that Starmer prioritizes political interests over children's welfare. The international response was equally damaging. French President Macron's office released a careful statement noting that France had mechanisms to discourage consanguineous marriages for public health reasons. Germany's health ministry tweeted statistics showing that genetic counseling was mandatory for cousin marriages under German law. Even Canada, usually Britain's most reliable Commonwealth ally, couldn't stay silent. Ontario's health minister tweeted, "Cousin marriage significantly increases genetic disorder risk. Our province requires genetic counseling. Protecting children should never be controversial." Britain was being diplomatically isolated over Starmer's decision, and it was happening in real time. Later that evening, I watched something unprecedented happen. J.D. Vance, the US Vice President, joined a live stream with conservative British commentator Konstantin Kisin. The discussion was supposed to be about universities, but Vance pivoted immediately to Rodgers's statement. "Look, I'll be direct," Vance said, his Ohio accent carrying clearly through the audio. "We've been concerned about Britain's direction for a while. The grooming gang scandals, the suppression of free speech, the radicalization in universities. But today's decision on cousin marriage, that's a line crossed." Kisin pressed him. "A line crossed, how?" "When a leader prioritizes a voting bloc over children's genetic health, he's not a leader. He's a politician in the worst sense of the word. And when that politician runs our closest ally, we have to reassess what that relationship means." The live stream had over 400,000 concurrent viewers, and the clip would be viewed 28 million times within 48 hours. Sarah Rodgers had achieved something remarkable. She turned a domestic British policy decision into an international referendum on Starmer's leadership and Britain's values. She'd exposed the moral compromises at the heart of modern British politics, and she'd done it all in 43 seconds of devastating truth-telling. Sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't careful diplomacy. It's someone willing to say what everyone's thinking but nobody dares to voice. Sarah Rodgers said it, America heard it, and Britain will never be the same.